Hey everybody, welcome back to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking with Dirk Izzo, Senior Vice President and General Manager of NCR Hospitality. He and his team are responsible for developing simple and innovative solutions that run restaurants. Dirk, I'm really looking forward to talking with you because, man, oh man, does my heart go out to the restaurants around the world who have been affected by COVID. I was very happy. My family and I carried out from a restaurant the other day called Beverly Hills Grill, which is just great restaurant. They're at 50% capacity, but they were telling me that because of carryout, they're doing great. And so let's just start there about the heart of the restaurant today, and just what that looks like and how you really had to pivot as a company to support them.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, obviously everybody knows that the pandemic has hit our industry very badly. It's been a really tough time for people. We've done a lot to try to help people just kind of secure themselves. One of the things you just mentioned was e-commerce. So we had a lot of folks that didn't have an e-commerce presence at all, no app, no web presence, and we offered to set that up during this pandemic, and we set up 2,500 sites. With an e-commerce solution. So people like yourself, John, could go out and order food and pick it up. And since we did that, it took us a while to get those all rolled out, but we've added a lot of capabilities to people. And so it's been, we've added the capability to order dine in. So at 50% capacity, they're actually, if you sit at a table, you can scan a QR code, order your food, and they bring it right out, which has been really, really helpful.
I love that.
Obviously do curbside and you could do pickup as well.
Yeah, I love the menus on your phone is great. I want to go back though and talk about something that you mentioned, that many of these restaurants didn't have e-commerce. Whether it's a restaurant or really any company, to me, pre-COVID, this was always a decade of you've got to get in front of technology, innovation, and into the e-commerce space. Many studies pre-COVID had pointed to the fact that 85% of the jobs that even exist in the year 2030 do not exist today. And so we were already looking at a decade of adaptability, innovation, on how to kind of, keep moving forward and innovating. So to all of the restaurants or even the other companies, right? Because you have an interesting background. You have more than 20 years of experience in Fortune 100 and startup environments. How important is e-commerce in general for any company, specifically restaurants, but for any company in this decade?
Oh, it's incredibly important. If you look at across the industries we serve banking, we serve retail, and we serve hospitality as the three core industries. All of them have required significant innovation around e-commerce as we've gone into this and coming out of this pandemic. So it's been a real challenge for us from that perspective to actually support e-commerce and support the transition that our customers are going through.
Yeah. And so when it comes to the next level of e-commerce, what does that look like? What should they be thinking about and forecasting and projecting, as 1 or 2 years from now?
Yeah, I think it's going to continue to evolve. So if you just look at the transactions, when prior to the pandemic, we were seeing roughly about 20% to 30% of the transactions coming through some sort of e-commerce channel. When the pandemic hit, we saw 6 years of innovation happen in 6 months. It was extremely
unbelievable. Yeah.
And we saw it spiked up to 90. So we had people doing e-commerce based transactions for quick service restaurants and table service restaurants. And now as it's starting to stabilize and some governments are opening back up, possibly too soon, maybe not, you're starting to see it level back out at the 50 to 60% range. So I think the net of it is, I think e-commerce has evolved tremendously fast over the last, I'd call it 3 to 4 months. I think it's going to continue to evolve as we go forward. And I think the way we interact with restaurants, in our case, is going to shift.
Yeah.
Like, it's no longer going to be touching the menus or touching a portfolio. I think everything's going to be done from our personal devices.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's going to be so many changes, and I think taking your temperature is a really smart thing for all restaurants and companies to do when you walk in. And how many times have we been into a restaurant or an office and a meeting, where the person is, so, oh, sorry, I came to work today, even though I had 102 fever because I didn't want to miss a day, infecting everyone, or going to a restaurant. So some of the things that are put into place, I think, are great. I want to talk to you about, you're a technology provider. You work with restaurants around the world. And so as the president of a company that's doing that, NCR Hospitality, how did you go from being a company to being a global company?
Yeah. So our strategy from that perspective, so we started as a US based company for the most part in hospitality. Mm-hmm. And then we followed the globals, if you will. So when McDonald's went into a new geography, or Yum Brands went into a new geography, we followed them and we helped them put a footprint there. And then we expanded from there. So we have 90,000 sites across the globe that use our software and our technology to help support their core business, and a lot of them, their e-commerce business.
Yeah. It's interesting you talk about you follow the globals. It reminds me of, I read or heard, that Burger King would pick their locations based, across the street from where McDonald's picked theirs. They just kind of followed McDonald's, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about following the globals, what are some of the, not only things, but the, other indicators that you're looking at when you do look for growth?
Well, clearly we look at the demographics, right? So how many people are there? We look at the number of restaurants that are there as well. For us, it's always about how do we figure out the areas where we can help our customers the most and at the same time grow. And so you look at places like China and India, where there's just massive populations, and figure out how you can actually help support those folks.
Yeah,
it's been one of our litmus tests, if you will. Like we want to be able to support our global customers, and then where appropriate, be able to support local customers in those areas as well.
Yeah, I love it. All right, I want to rewind with you, Dirk. Now, so let's rewind. You've been working with Fortune 100 companies. What are things that Fortune 100 companies do so fundamentally, and that are so fundamentally strong, that other companies need to wake up and pay attention to?
Yeah. I would say through my career, one of the things that we typically haven't put a lot of focus into or a lot of energy behind is the services aspect of our business. So people get very excited about cloud-based solutions, which we have a lot, and there's a lot of them out there in the industry. But at the end of the day, what I've seen is the need for services and support. So I've seen, as you probably have as well, a general manager in a restaurant, if something goes wrong, they're pulling their hair out. They don't know where to go. We have 19,000 services professionals across the globe that are there on the other end of the phone. So one of our big areas to help our customers is, listen, there's one number to call and one throat to choke, so to speak, right? If you have a problem, you call us and we'll send somebody in to help fix that problem. It can be with anything in the store. I think that's an area of growth. And I think that's an area that a Fortune 100 company, a bigger company, has the breadth to really support customers on a very broad range of capabilities like that, where smaller individuals or smaller companies don't have that capability.
Yeah, and maybe they do, but they're not thinking of it in a way that they can do it, right? Because you're talking about customer experience, you're talking about being there to help clients in real time and take away stress. And right. So I think a lot of times companies, can do it, maybe not to the scale that you can do it, but they don't even know where to begin because their culture doesn't kind of line up with them doing that. Or they look at something like that as an expense instead of an investment in themselves and in their people and in their product. And so when I hear somebody like you talk about, like, hey, 19,000 people are sitting at a phone waiting because we know you're going to have a problem and we're here to be the solution, that's incredible. So I want to talk about how you guys look at that as an investment versus an expense.
Yeah, well, for me, it's 100% an investment. And I've looked from the beginning.
I'm going to shut my door. Those are my dogs. Keep on going.
Okay, sure. From the beginning, I've really thought about how do we take care of our customers. And at the end of the day, if we invest in our customers, we're no longer in this for a short term, hey, sell them something and walk away. This is a relationship that's going to stay for a long period of time.
Right.
We've shifted to an as a service based model. And so we're here to provide a service to you, which is an ongoing service. And so with that comes an investment. So we've invested in people and technology and call centers to be able to be on the other end to accept those calls. And we're seeing great response from customers. They're very excited because historically they would go and find the lowest cost provider in certain areas. And then the onus would be on the GM in a restaurant to try to figure out who to call to get something fixed. And now through COVID, they're realizing, oh man, we need some help here. And if you had one company to call, it'd be very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems, and the way you articulate it, it seems so simple. And I just want to highlight again, like to people who are listening who, whether it's now live or later, is there are certain things that you have to take off the expense line and put into the investment line. And then you can start with one person, right? But you can start with different solutions, but to figure it out and to give the customer the ultimate experience is what I'm hearing you say, Dirk, is really, really, so important.
Yeah, without question.
Yeah. Let's rewind a little bit further and talk about how, somebody gets into this business in the beginning. I want to hear a little bit about your backstory and your journey to, I always like to rewind when I'm talking to people, right? So like today you're the president and GM of NCR Hospitality, but rewind, 20, 25 some years ago, what was the path? Because most people, in hindsight, you can't map it out, but it's easy. It's fun to tell the story.
Yeah, sure. So I spent some time at IBM. So obviously a big global company. And then I spent 19 years, the majority of my career at Nielsen. So the research and media company. Fantastic experience. I learned a lot. And I would tell you through my career, probably what's helped me the most in stepping into this role is an appreciation for different cultures and a global perspective. And when I was with Nielsen, I had the opportunity to go to Singapore and run the Asian region for them. And it went from Beijing to New Zealand to Egypt down to South Africa. So it was a very broad region with 50 countries. And when you do that, you get a true appreciation for culture and diversity and what that can bring to the mix. Yeah. And so I think, in fact, this is kind of interesting, but a lot of the folks that work with me in Asia have joined me here at NCR to help the restructure and really reframe our business here.
That's very cool. That's very cool. And so what's, two great companies. What was the biggest lesson you learned at IBM?
So for me, I spent a lot of time in IBM consulting, and I learned process discipline, Six Sigma discipline. I learned, for me personally, the way to approach a problem and to think about problems and how to kind of get to the root cause. I think that's probably the most valuable thing I took away from IBM. Yeah.
How do you get to a root problem? Because I think you bring up something really, there's a problem, and then there's the perception and the reality, and then there's the real problem, right? And then there's the bedrock of the problem. And if you don't get to the bedrock of the problem, then it never gets healed. And then from the bedrock, I work with my clients like this all the time, from the bedrock, then you got to figure out the rollout and the solution of the problem. So how do you get to the bedrock, and then how do you then evolve it from there?
So I always tell my team, you have to ask the 5 whys, because it's 5 layers deep where you get to the root cause. This is a very simple answer, obviously, but if you start to ask the question why and why and why, and you kind of dig down, you make people think, and they're finally starting to realize not the superficial issue, but the root cause of the issue. There's obviously a lot of tools that you can use as well, right, to analyze data and to look at things like that. But in the simplest fashion, I force my team to constantly ask the 5 whys and just keep digging and digging and digging until you find the root of what's driving the problem and the challenge.
How do you, I want to stick on this because I think this is a problem that, I've been in a lot of boardrooms and a lot of meetings where there's a difference of opinion of what that root cause is. And then there's the leader in the room that believes what it is. And then there's the person who disagrees. What's the resolution of that of that conflict management?
Yeah, I think it's data. I think it's data. So I think if you get down to, if you can surface the data and have a conversation that's a database conversation, it becomes very simple. Right? I think a lot of times we deal with conjecture, we deal with our thoughts and our opinions and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the data is the data.
Correct. You know, it's a long time ago, someone once said to me, "You can't negotiate facts." And to your point, right? Because everything else can be emotional, right? You can have emotional differences, but when you look at data and you look at numbers and you look at facts, then you can really get to a decision. I love that. What about Nielsen? I mean, that's all about ratings and, you know, how things are measured. What was the lesson you learned there?
Yeah, it goes back to the culture. I think my biggest move there was spending 4 years in Asia and really getting an understanding of the culture and how different cultures are. It's funny celebrating Chinese New Year, celebrating Diwali, you know, just celebrating some of these local cultures that are over there it was really interesting for me just to learn about people and learn about their ways of living.
Yeah,
and you learn how to adapt to talk to them in certain ways and address them in certain ways also.
Yeah. You know, they say this is the decade of pre-COVID of adaptability, and colleges have been trying to figure out how to teach into a job market where jobs they don't even know what those jobs are yet. And so really figuring out a way to angle teachings on how to be adaptable. And so within your company walls, as you kind of forecast out and look forward, what does adaptability mean to you and your company?
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to reflect back on a college student for a second because my younger son's still in college, and I had the same conversation with him about adaptability because he's like, "Oh, I'm sitting in a room and I'm on virtual classes all the time," and I explained to him that it is no different for us in the working world right now. The majority of us are virtual, and we've had to change and adapt to that. And so having that ability to change and to address things differently is critical, whether you're a student in school or you're in the working world. We've adapted in some pretty cool ways. So we still try to keep true to our culture. So we have stand-ups every morning from an executive perspective to make sure we're all aligned with what we have to get done that day and that week, which is really helpful. And then we do silly things like Fun Thursday. So we had a Fun Thursday where the whole company came together and we would have a couple drinks and decompress for the week on Thursday night and just bond. We still do that. So not every Thursday, but we do that quite often where we get the teams together and we have toasts and we just kind of celebrate some of our major milestones. And so I think in the virtual world, you have to adapt some of your physical world processes, events, and things like that into that virtual world. And I think if you do that successfully, you keep your engagement very high with your employees.
Yeah, it's so important, and keeping engagement, I think, is harder than ever. I mean, you and I'm on Zoom all day, like you are probably, and I'm on Zoom all day. I'm doing interviews with great people like you, Dirk, where it's like you can connect, but it's still not the same as if we were face to face at a conference or if we were in the boardroom. So how do you keep the energy and the frequency and the vibration high? Because a lot of that falls on your shoulders and the leaders in the company to really, keep it just full and, in front of everybody.
I agree with you. I think when you're on a Zoom call or a WebEx call or whatever, you tend to multitask. People do that today with two screens, right? You're on a call, but you're multitasking. When you're in a meeting, you don't do that. You're paying attention.
Right.
So I think one of the simple things we've done is we've just held each other accountable for being in the now. And so if you see somebody drifting off, we'll text somebody and say, "Hey, listen, you're multitasking. Pay attention." Just have fun. We just do fun things like that to kind of keep people in the now. If you do that, you can actually achieve the same objectives. I personally think when you start to drift and people are multitasking, you lose focus and then you end up repeating yourself over and over again.
Yeah. I love it. I love what you're doing. I love what you're talking about your culture. I love how you're talking about consistency. I love how you're talking about, data-driven bedrock decisions to solve things. as you know, I think for every business person, and I see it in people that I coach, forecasting and projecting, where they used to be able to forecast out, 5 years, 10 years, today it's 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, 6 months. As somebody who is in the restaurant business, how are you forecasting over the next 12 months as we're 2021 is around the corner?
Yeah, it's really hard, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And so we're in constant contact with our customers right now. So we put a brand new team in place to help with customer success, to make sure they're successful. They're touching our customers all the time, and they're getting a really good sense of how they're doing, because a lot of customers have financial challenges right now, but how they're doing, and then what we can do to help. And as soon as we know what we can do to help, we can kind of understand, one, are they going to stay in business and be in business tomorrow? And then two is, are there opportunities for us to help them more in certain ways? And so we use that as a lever and kind of a gut check for ourselves. And then we have a lot of run rate businesses. So we have businesses that kind of chunk along, because there are very successful quick service restaurants, as an example, that are still opening new stores. They're still remodeling stores, things like that. So we have a lot of benefits from that as well.
Yeah, I love it. Dirk, what are 1, 2, or 3, you pick the number, most important qualities of a leader today?
So I'll tell you what I hold myself accountable to. One is engagement with people. And I try to have a lot of empathy for the team. So I try to put myself in their shoes, especially during these tough times during the pandemic. And I do the same with customers. And my sense is, if you do that and you have a lot of empathy, you will always end up with the right solution for both yourself, your company, and for your customers. So that's the biggest one. The second one I would tell you is accountability. I think it's very easy for people to hide on the other end of a Zoom call, like we talked before, and not be held accountable. And accountability is not about me holding somebody accountable. It's about the team holding each other accountable. And so I think that's a big thing, and a big part of our culture here is it's not one individual, right? It's a team effort, and the team needs to hold each other accountable, because we only win if the entire team is clicking and the entire team is winning together.
Yeah, I love what you're talking about. Empathy, to me, it amazes me how many people don't have it. I mean, it's so important, because one of my favorite Coveyisms is, seek first to understand before being understood. And that's all, to me, it's all about empathy, right? Understanding, listening. And there's 3 sides to every story, sometimes 4, and then there's the truth, right? And so having empathy to just hear people out and understand their situations and be nurturing. But I love, because I also, in my coaching world, feel like I have a lot of empathy, but also hold people accountable. And right. I think what we saw a lot of was in March and April, when COVID hit, everyone was kind of like, take care of yourselves, don't worry, like, let's just try to stay afloat. And then companies started layering in accountability to make sure that things were getting done. So I think it's such an important balance of emotional intelligence with, we all have a job to do, and having accountability. Because accountability without authority means nothing.
I 100% agree.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Dirk, you ready for a quick speed round?
Sure.
All right, favorite book and why?
I'm going to get it for you.
Oh, all right.
We just talked about accountability.
It's the greatest.
Of a team.
Patrick's books are great. I love that. Is such a great book. Yeah,
it's a required reading for everybody on my team. So it's one of the things I give out, because I think the trust and accountability model he talks about is phenomenal.
Yeah, no, that's one of my all-time favorites as well. Yeah, I love it. You know what? A book that you would love, which is it's a little bit different. It's not written that same way, but it's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, and it's a book. It's a great book, and it's a great book that I think you'll enjoy, because it's all about why we resist what we need to do most. It's a great book. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received.
I'm sorry, say again.
The best piece of wisdom you've ever received.
I'm going to go back to something my father said to me when I was young. He grew up on a farm, And he just believes that you have to work hard. Yeah. It's not the most intelligent person that always wins the game. It's a person that's willing to put in the hard work and to make it happen. And that was the case for me growing up in sports, in my accomplishments in school as well, and in the working world. I'm not afraid of hard work. And I think that was the best advice my father ever gave me, is roll up your sleeves and dig in.
Yeah. Well, my dad gave me the same advice, and it's true. And because I shouldn't say never, but I'm usually not the smartest person in the room, but I usually am one of the hardest working and the most consistent. And so, you win that way. One piece of advice you would give somebody graduating college today?
It would probably be in line with that. So I have a son that just graduated and started work with Accenture. A little plug for him.
Oh, congratulations. Where did he graduate from?
University of Arizona.
All right, congratulations to him. All right.
Thank you. And he got put on a project that he wasn't really excited about. And I'm like, we got to take every project as a learning opportunity. So there's goodness in every project. So sit back, learn, and absorb. That's what your job is right now.
I love it. Tell everybody who your ideal client is, how they can get a hold of you, and all your contact information.
Hey, our ideal client is any restaurant out there that needs help right now. We help with e-commerce, as we mentioned early on in this conversation. We help with a core restaurant management platform, and we help with the services to run the restaurant from wall to wall. Those are the three things that we do. And we're very focused on that. And they can all run independently. So don't think that you have to have all NCR in order to do that. I'd love that, but you don't have to have that. You can come check us out at our NCR website at www.ncr.com and look at the rest.
Dirk, I appreciate everything that you shared today, everything that you talked about when it came to the 5 whys, the consistent things that you're doing in your company, the stand-ups and the fun Thursdays, the importance in the marriage of empathy and accountability, adaptability, talking about culture and understanding those, and everybody around you. The number one thing that you're there to help people and have 19,000 people like waiting to just help your customers. That's great. But I'm going to end it with what your dad said, because you can have all of that, but you got to work hard. Exactly. So I appreciate you taking time to chat with me today. Thank you very much. To the Think community, thanks for tuning in. If Dirk can help you, reach out to him. Dirk, thank you very much. And thanks, man. Appreciate
Have a great one.
You
Bye-bye.
too.